The Future of Your Firm Through Adaptation with Jared Correia, episode 153. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest episode here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I have a treat for you today. I've got somebody who I just met, and we really hit it off in our initial conversation. I think that Jared's a great guy, and I'm really excited to bring him to you. Let me give you the official bio script that I was provided, but you're going to see Jared's just a lot of fun, and we're going to have a great conversation. Jared Correia is the founder and CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting and the co-founder and COO of Gideon Software Incorporated. Red Cave offers business management consulting services for lawyers to law firms and bar associations. Gideon provides chatbots built exclusively for law firms that converts leads to initial consultations using a no-code chatbot builder and included scheduling feature. We're going to talk about all this in our conversation. I can tell you I'm excited about this no-code business. And if you don't know what that means, it means you don't have to be a techie to be able to use it. So I'm excited to jump in with Jared. Jared, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I know we just met, but I feel like we've been talking for forever. So this is hopefully the first of many conversations.
Yeah, sometimes you have that where you meet somebody and it's something clicks and you just know that there's a synergy there, and hopefully it's the beginning of a great relationship. So I'm looking forward. Actually, what we didn't cover, are you a football fan?
Yes, I could be described as a football fan. All right, are we going to clash on this though? Because you're in New York.
No, you're in Massachusetts and I'm in New York. Although my Giants are sucking this season.
They've not been great, but they're better than the Jets.
Yes,
so
exactly. At least we've stayed better than the Jets. We have that to hang our hands on, right?
Not that the Pats are doing wonderfully this year either, but we'll see.
Listen, you've got Cam Newton showed up in a new way for you guys that he hasn't played that way in a couple of years in North Carolina. So, I think that there's definitely hope. Tom Brady has showed that he's still got it over at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he's been good. Yeah.
So
I'm not worried. We got Belichick. We'll be fine.
Yep. All right, cool. So I don't know how many of our listeners are football fans. I don't really talk about it a lot on the show, and I probably should. But it's interesting because I got into football very late in life. I'm not that old, but so I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm also a paramedic, and I used to work a steady Thursday night shift, and my partner on Thursday nights, and I was going through school. I was going for my master's, my MBA, and I was doing that through distance learning. So I was constantly reading and studying while we were on shift if we weren't on a job. And my partner was an avid football fan. So when it came to football season, he was in like 2 fantasy leagues, and the Thursday night game was on, and he'd be screaming at the TV, and I'm trying to like concentrate on my schoolwork, and all this is just a screaming going on in the next room. And finally, like after 2 or 3 weeks of not being able to focus on anything during the time of the game, I went in there and I was like, all right, if I'm not going to get my schoolwork done, at least explain to me how this game works. And that's how I got into football. And now I'm an avid football fan.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm in a couple of pick 'em pools. I'm trying to watch all the games as much as I can. I got the NFL Red Zone that I like to watch, where you see every scoring play. So I've kind of been converted, but it's not something that I grew up with, and it's not, it's fairly new to me. So I kind of feel like out of my element sometimes talking about it because I don't realize how far I've come. I don't want to sound like an idiot, but
no, this is legit, man. So you got fantasy teams this year? How are those doing?
So I never got into fantasy. Here's the thing. So I'm like, I'm an accountant, right? So I'm very technical, and like, I can't join a fantasy league unless I feel like I have the time to do analytics and to analyze every player I'm going to choose and whether that they fit together and what their likelihood of success is together. So I feel like it's a massive project for me to play in a fantasy league, and that's what's been holding me back so far. But I'm in a couple
one of these days you should get into it.
Yeah, I will, because it looks like a lot of fun. But I'm in a couple of pools where you just pick the winners against the spread, and you know, and actually I had a pretty good week this past week. I won in one pool and lost by a point in the other, but 10 out of 14, right? That's not bad. I wish I had that every week though. Then I'd be in the number one spot.
We'll see. Like, I think the Chiefs are favored by like 22 over the Jets this week or something like that. So we'll see where you go on that one.
I don't know. I mean, 22 points is a lot of points to lay.
It's a big spread.
But I don't think that. I think Patrick Mahomes is probably going to run the ball up and down, you know, against the Jets. There's a good chance that it's going to be like a 40-point win.
Yeah, it could be ugly
for KC. So we'll see.
And the Jets good football talk, though.
Too. Yes. Yeah, I don't know. We got like the first 10 minutes of the show is going to be a football segment.
I had no idea this was going to happen.
The other thing that we have in common is young kids at home and working from home with young kids underfoot. And I think a lot of our listeners probably can relate to that. I know that from March to September, we, you know, in the first few weeks, it was hell. Like we had no idea what we were doing. My wife working from home. I'm working now. I always work from home, and she works from home 3 days a week normally. So this is our normal element. It's not like we were like, oh, it's new for me to work from home. But we never worked from home with the kids here. We always had them in daycare, and we had them in daycare
totally
from
different
9 to 5, 9 to 6.
Yes.
You know, and all of a sudden they're here. So the first couple of weeks was just like, we had no idea. Like we were both on top of the kids, both trying to leave them, you know, we don't want them to watch TV. So we're trying to like get them, you know, and the Zoom calls and all of that. We finally realized that we have to split the day. Right. So I got the mornings, she got the afternoons. I worked from 9 to 1. She worked from 1 to 5. And the other, you know, and we just traded off who was watching the kids. And that worked well for us to be productive for 4 hours. But what ended up happening for me is I have a lot of calls that I have with clients, and coaching calls. I do, you know, we have the incubator membership. I do, you know, call a week with that. There's all these different calls that I do. So what was happening was all my calls are contracted to this 4 hour period. And then I had no time to get my stuff done. There was no time to do anything else.
I hear you. Yes.
Phone time and conversations. And it's really affected my business, right? I haven't done an active promotion to bring in new coaching clients in the last few months because I just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think my lawyer clients, you know, the listeners here, many of you are facing similar situations. So I'm curious to know what your situation looked like and how you're handling it. And if you've seen that with your clients, is that something that's coming up?
Right on cue, my daughter comes into the room. Yeah, go ahead. I'll be right there. Look at that. That was not planned.
Right.
No, it's
live play by play here for you guys.
I have to say, my kids have been really great about it, which I'm lucky about. But I had a little bit of different situation. Like my wife worked in an office, so the home was like my sanctuary, and I had an office. I had nobody around. I would just crank throughout the day, and it's been very similar to you. So like, I find now that I have to be at like peak efficiency to get anything done all day long. And if I sleep in for an hour, like it's all over. My whole day is shot. That's funny. My wife works at a big law firm. So like when she came home, I knew the office was no longer mine when she bought a giant printer and put it on the desk. And that's when I knew I would be working in the kitchen or working around in a bedroom here and there from now on. But it's very similar to you. Like I do a lot of calls, I do a lot of presentations, and like trying to navigate that with kids asking you for stuff, it's really, really hard to do. So actually what I was doing a little bit before the pandemic and have started to do more of now is I wake up really early. So I'm usually up at like 4 o'clock every day. I'll work for 3 hours, then I'll work out for like an hour, and then I'll take a little bit of a break and get back to work. And like you said, like how many hours do I have to actually concentrate on something during the day? Maybe 4, because the kids are home all the time. So I take those 3 hours in the morning and try to be hyper productive. And that's kind of worked for me, even though I'm going to bed a little bit earlier than I want to. For now, I think it's sufficient. So that's
Yeah,
how I've dealt with it.
what's crazy for me is that I know that the key would be waking up early, like you're doing. But what ends up happening is that I can't go to sleep because I've got these things to do. So I end up working at night, and
Right.
then
Right.
there's no way I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm first going to sleep at 2.
Yeah.
And
And
that's,
it's a hard transition to make for sure.
yeah. And so I kind of need to like force myself into that scenario where, I mean, honestly, right now, it's just like we brought on a couple more team members, and I'm just trying to offload more things so that I don't have to be burning the midnight oil, and I can make that switch. The other thing that's really been affected is my physical health. I've been on and off with being consistent with, it's funny, on and off with being consistent is kind of opposite each other, right? But I'll have periods of consistency, and then I'll, fall off the wagon again, because it's so hard to keep prioritizing something when there are other things that seem like they're a bigger priority. So I've got the Peloton right here in my office, and the intention was, jump on it even during the day. Like I'm doing something at work, and I, jump on it for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, get a workout in. But that's not, I find that's not happening. And
so hard to do it. Yeah. It's so hard to get off task. I agree. Because like once you've got that work and you've got it staring you in the face, and you're like, I have the choice to exercise or to work, but I'm so far behind on work. You're always making the choice for work. I totally get it. I mean, that's why I had to segregate it out and say, you know what, like I may not get as much done, but I know that I'll get a consistent amount of sleep every night. I know that I'll be able to work out every day, but it was very hard to push to that. It was a big change. So
yeah. All right. I want to switch gears. So
all right.
you're doing consulting for law firms. You're in the business every single day.
Yes.
And you're seeing what they're struggling with. Talk about what are you seeing as the biggest struggle? If you had to like rate them and choose the biggest struggle that law firm owners have right now, whether related to COVID or not, honestly, my guess is that it's nothing new, and it's the same struggle that it was last year. But what do you see as the biggest struggle that law firm owners are having right now in running their business and or growing it?
Well, it's kind of similar, but slightly different twist during this pandemic, right? And I think it's like apathy. Like for me, like the biggest problem law firms have is that they stagnate easily and they don't change, right? They don't adjust. And that was true before the pandemic. That's true after the pandemic. So I see a lot of lawyers now who are like, okay, we're going to be very reactive to everything that happens. So there's this pandemic. We're just going to wait until things go back to normal before we do anything. And I've actually had some law firms like shut down intake entirely. And they're like, we'll get back up and running when things are back to normal. And, I think for those law firms, the realization is that like your idea of normal was like 1999. It's not just a pandemic thing. It's like technology has overtaken all businesses, right? And law is really one of the last holdouts. So I see a lot of lawyers who are not being aggressive about creating a digital law firm, right? From what has been an analog law firm. How do you use technology effectively? How do you get more efficient? Lawyers still think that the way you make money is you charge more. And if you look at it from a geographic perspective and in terms of practice areas, lawyers charge the same things basically in the same places. The difference is how much work you can get through. So I just see lawyers like all they do is put out fires. They're reactive to everything. And those law firms that are proactive and are starting to innovate are the ones that are really doing well. But again, as you mentioned, that hasn't been a change. Like that was true in 1999, that was true in 2009, and it's true today. I don't think that's necessarily a pandemic thing. It's just exacerbated the issue.
Jared, you're speaking my language right now, because this is something that I have been preaching here on the podcast, and I think that Simon Sinek has said it best. And like why is it that the video industry was overtaken by a technology company? Where is Blockbuster today? Why is it that Blockbuster is gone? And what happened with Blockbuster is the CEO of Blockbuster actually saw what Netflix was doing and said, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's going to be the future. We have to do that too." went to the board of directors and said, we have to focus on digital. We got to start creating this digital content. And the board of directors voted no and said, we are not doing that initiative. And do you know why?
I do not know
Because
why.
they generated 14% of their revenue from late fees.
Oh yeah, I remember those video late fees. That
So,
makes sense.
Right. So they did not want to lose 14% of revenue by going to a product that you cannot charge late fee on.
Right. Right.
But that was
somewhat short-sighted.
In hindsight, when you look at it, that was such short-minded thinking, right? Narrow-minded thinking, because the reality is that you would have had an entirely bigger total addressable market. You would have had, recurring subscription revenue that you didn't have. And, people don't have to walk around your store browsing for videos, and they can get it on demand. Like if you think about it, it was a no-brainer, but they were stuck in their ways. They weren't willing to think about the possibilities. All they saw was competition and loss of revenue.
Right.
And that kind of thinking is what sinks industries. It's what sinks companies. You look at the publishing industry. Why did the publishing industry not create the Kindle? Why is it that Amazon created the Kindle? And there's example after example of those kinds of things where, narrow-minded thinking is what prevented an industry from being the next best thing, the next great thing. And legal is there right now. Mm-hmm. And like you said, legal is living in the old ages. Richard Susskind back in the 90s was telling everybody, look, you're going to be communicating with clients via email. And he literally got banned from speaking at events and banned from speaking at bar associations because he was saying this blasphemy, that we're going to communicate with clients by email. And, that is the mindset that attorneys have. Yes. We're a profession. We have guidelines, we have rules, and, we nothing can change. This won't happen to us. And if we allow technology in, that's going to mean that there's less use for us. And therefore we have to prevent it. We have to hold it back and hold it at bay. And the reality is that if you really think of the future and you think of, do you really think that digging your heels in the ground means that we're never going to have a virtual court, that we're never going to have electronic notary services? Yeah. That stuff's going to happen. I mean, look at DocuSign. DocuSign just bought Live Oak Technologies. Are you familiar with that purchase?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So DocuSign bought Live Oak Technologies. Live Oak Technologies was kind of like the Zoom for verified, certified transactions. So Live Oak Technologies created a video platform where you can have people get authenticated as that this is really the person that you're meeting with in order to come into this video conference. And DocuSign is merging Live Oak Technologies technology with their electronic signature technology to create electronic notarization services, where you can have both parties and the notary on a video call where everybody is verified, and then this document gets signed with the witness, it all gets recorded, and it gets placed into this electronic envelope where now you've got a certified notary that's done electronically. Folks, this is not science fiction.
Right. And it probably should have been happening years ago.
This is a very fast growing publicly traded company that is, a lot of people are hearing about it just because of the stock momentum that it's had over COVID. But COVID has accelerated a lot of this stuff. There are courts who are holding virtual Zoom court right now. Right. And they're doing it because they have to. And everyone is sure that as soon as COVID's over, we're going to go back to the same old, going back to the courtroom. But there's only a matter of time before people are going to start questioning, like, why? Why are we doing that? Why are we creating the inconvenience for people to have to come and sit outside a courtroom waiting for their turn for hours on end when they can show up to a Zoom call at a specified time and have their moment in court? So I think that a lot of this stuff is the change is coming. Things things are happening, and I love that you started with that. I've
been at this for years, man. People are like, "Hey, that stuff you were talking about in 2006, you're right about that."
Yeah.
Just took a while.
And we're doing a conference in February, and
Mhm.
the focus of the event, like our underpinning theme, is getting your firm ready for the next generation of law,
Right.
which is, like, if you were to recognize that we're no longer going to be doing business formation for somebody. We're no longer going to be doing divorce separation agreements for somebody. That's technology is going to handle that. And,
Yep.
and even the negotiation between the parties is going to happen through software.
Mhm.
We're not going to be involved.
Mhm.
Where are we going to be involved? If you start to peel back that onion and say, okay, all of this transactional stuff is probably going to happen through software. I mean, just look at what is it, LegalZoom, that does business formation stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I had somebody on the podcast here recently who's they have a free service that does the document creation for DACA and stuff like that, immigration law. And we'll put that in the show notes. I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember the name of the episode and the episode number, but my team will drop that in the show notes of the show. But this stuff is happening, like anything that can be, think of TurboTax, and how it created this ability for people to do their own tax return. I mean, you could have done your own tax return before. You just had to go to the post office and get the instruction manual and then weed through the forms and hope that you were doing it right and make mathematical errors and make clerical errors. And then you get letters from the IRS over the next, 3 or 4 years because you made you carried 1 zero too many in the wrong place. TurboTax comes along, asks you a bunch of questions, and voila, you got a tax return. And for another $19, you've got audit protection. Like,
Right.
Why do we need an accountant? Right.
Yeah.
So the accounting
Totally
industry
true.
went
Yeah.
through the same thing that legal is going to be going through. The accounting industry is just one step ahead of you. And I got to witness that. I got to see what they went through. And it became a bigger and bigger push to, hey, this stuff is transactional work. That's going to be overtaken by computers. Don't focus on building your firm on transactional work. What should you do? Advisory services, where it's your mind that's needed, where it's your experience that's needed. That is not necessarily going to be taken over by a computer. That's where you need to hang your hat. That's where you need to separate yourself from the pack.
Right. Yeah, I would totally agree.
That's why I focused on profit first. I'm showing a book here on the video. It's just one of the many things that I hung my hat on. I became a profit first professional because it was a simple system and solution to a business problem where business owners can now manage their cash in a way that makes sense to them. And by becoming a profit first professional, I separated myself from a lot of other accounting firms. I became somebody who was focused on helping people understand their cash flow and understand their cash management, as opposed to somebody who's just going to go into your books at the end of the year, do a couple of adjusting journal entries and prepare your tax return for you. Because
Right.
accountants are not needed for that. Software can do it. And software can do it for you without you hiring an accountant. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't. There's still, accountants still understand the tax law better than software is if the right questions are not being asked. So if you're not knowing that you should put this information in, it's not going to end up in there. And I think that that's the value still beyond software. But advisory services is where it's at in the accounting industry. And I think that law firms need to look at that too. And law firms need to say, okay, where is my value that software is not going to overtake? And that's where I need to start positioning my firm, that we're providing those services and we're not focusing on the easy money, it's easy money because it's transactional, because anybody can do it.
Right.
And therefore it's going to be overtaken by software. And if that's all you know how to do, then you're going to be a dinosaur pretty soon.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the way legal professionals view that, they feel like that's the death of the industry, right? But the idea as a lawyer was never to do like the transactional work and get paid the lowest amounts to do that. Like when I talk to law firms, I always say like what you want to be doing is practicing at the top of your law license, which means you're doing the most difficult work with your mind, like you talked about, that you can charge the most money for. And if you're willing to do that, then when you look at these technology changes, that's actually advantageous to you because you can make more for every hour you work than you ever did before. And what you have to do is build out on a process, on a system of process innovation, which a lot of law firms are not great at. So like I said, when I talk to clients, I'm talking about building workflows, building processes to free you up to do that kind of advisory work that accountants are already doing.
Right. And the interesting thing is that the common business model with law firms is to charge hourly. And
Right.
when you're billing hourly, your business model is at odds with any sort of innovation, any sort of process, any sort of
Efficiency,
technology,
yes.
anything that's going to make you more efficient actually hurts you from your being able to bill by the hour, right? You're billing less hours, therefore you have to get more clients through the door in order to make the same amount of money, which is a big reason why I harp on being against the billable hour. And it's interesting because there's different points of view here. And I don't know what yours is. I'd love to hear your take on it. But I'm a big fan of creating these subsets of what you do and doing flat fee billing for it so that you have the freedom to create efficiencies in your firm so that you can make even more profit off of that flat fee, where you don't have to worry about the fact that, oh, if I make it more efficient, then I am going to have to bill less, and I'm going to therefore have to work harder to bring in more clients and bring in more money. And obviously that's just one way of, people who are in personal injury law, right? They're contingency based. They're always going to be contingency based. They're not going to change to a flat fee model, and they'll never get clients that way. So I'm not referring to that, but I am referring to when you're doing hourly billing. Now, some things are very hard to get away from hourly. Like if you're in litigation and you're at the whim of the court, and and back and forth, and you can't predict how many times you're going to have to be back in court, it changes the game. But there's a lot that we do that we could package into a set thing and try to get that pricing right so that we're making even more money and the client is happier, right? When you're doing hourly billing and the client is receiving an hourly bill, you're in a constant contentious relationship with your client.
Right.
Because your client wants the least number of hours, you want the most number of hours, and there's always this fight. Every time you generate an invoice, it's like, how come you're charging for this? That's why, Clio Trends Report 2019, they talked about how a solo attorney is billing something like 2-point-something hours in the day, and they're 2.8 hours, and they're only collecting 2.1 or something. So why was there that differentiation between why is there half an hour lost in what they're collecting versus what they're billing? And the reason is, and why is it so low in the first place? Mm-hmm. The reason is because they're discounting the bill before it goes out. They're discounting the bill again when the client contends against it. And then some clients are not paying it because they don't like how much they were billed. So you have this awful business model, that's creating this constant, stress that's unnecessary.
Yeah, but legal consumers are wising up to this as well, though, because they know the billable hour is inefficient, and the problem is it's uncapped. Also, like if you're a legal consumer, one of their chief interests is in getting a total cost of representation, and if you can't give that as a lawyer and somebody else can, then they're more likely to retain that client. So some of the stuff you're talking about is great. So I would refer to what you talked about as like limited scope billing, right? You have a matter and you break it up into 5 chunks. Let's say you do A, B, C, D in order, right? It reduces the risk on everybody. It's less of a buy-in for the client. That's helpful. I see law firms doing risk collars as well, right? Where they'll say, hey, this is the amount of hours I think this is going to take. If I come in under that, I get a bonus. If I go over that, I'm giving you discounted hourly rate from there. I see a lot of law firms doing subscription services as well, much like Netflix, as we talked about.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. So that risk collar, it sounds like what contractors do when they're given a project, like let's say
very similar, right?
Yep. And if you take longer than a certain amount of time, you start to get penalized on how much you're going to get paid. If you come in early, then you get an extra award for coming in early.
That's exactly what that's like. But lawyers don't often do that. But it's a viable method to bill, right? Yeah. So I think this notion
and subscription. I interrupted you. So just talk about subscription for a moment.
Yeah, subscription is just for an attorney. Like you're putting rails around this a little bit. Like it's a certain number of hours, certain number of tasks, right? Maybe they get access to resources your clients that other people don't get, but it flattens the cost for your for your law clients, just like it flattens the cost for you as a consumer of a technology company. And that's really appealing, especially in the area of like outside counsel work. Companies love that because if anybody hates the inefficiency wrought by the billable hour, it's these larger companies that lawyers are working for as well. I've even seen lawyers do products, right? You talked about
Mhm.
LegalZoom before. They sell documents. Lawyers can sell documents too. They just don't.
Right.
So
Yes.
there's a lot of opportunity out there for sure that lawyers aren't taking advantage of. And like, if they start to do that, then it really ties in with what modern consumers want out of legal services.
Yeah, in May, we did a whole series, an entire month in this podcast talking about how to position information products
Yeah.
in the cycle of the the law firm client. We talked about selling information that addresses the problem before somebody needs your legal services. So let's say somebody's a bankruptcy attorney. Well, what if you create a product that teaches people how to resolve their debt issues? You
Yeah.
sell that, you now have a much larger total addressable market, but
Right.
there's going to be a subset of those people who don't succeed with your product, right? But they now know that you have their best interest at heart. Now, when they need the next step, who are they calling? Who are they going to? Right.
Right.
So
Right.
there, so now it's an automatic shoe-in to the next step of using you for their legal services. So that's one way to position it. Another way to position it is if you're in an area of law where people are always questioning, should I do this myself? Right? Let's say you're doing family law and somebody just needs a child support modification.
Exactly.
So they want to know, and I'm only using that because I was married, got divorced, had to pay child support, and I went through a child support modification 3 times. The first time and the second time, I used an attorney. The third time, I did it myself.
Mm.
And I was always asking myself, like, what's the value that I'm getting from an attorney? And after going through it a couple of times, I realized attorney's not really doing anything for me. As a matter of fact, I probably could do a better job than they can portraying my own person, my own situation. The challenge I had was I don't know how to write the document properly. I don't know
Right.
how to, what the process is when I go to court. Had they had an information product that they sold, I would have easily bought that and followed it. And then had I not been successful in getting my modification, I might have gone back and said, hey, I tried to do this myself. I wasn't successful. Now I'm going through this again. Maybe I should retain you to have you do it. But creating that alternative to paid services, they're gonna do it anyway. Why do they have to go through all the pain to figure it out themselves
Oh,
and
totally.
then not get
Yeah.
paid for it, right? And you not get paid for it, right? You lose a client, you get nothing out of it. Here, you have another alternative way of collecting money from a lead that comes in. And then the last thing is at the end of the engagement, right? So you bring in a client, you serve them, the engagement's over. Now what happens, right? There's nothing, right?
Nothing.
Usually that's the end of the road. I don't
Yes.
deal with them anymore.
Silence. That's what happens.
Right. But let's say you're in family law. You get somebody to the end of a divorce, right? There's things that they have to navigate when the divorce is over. How do I socialize with my friends? How do I navigate, this shared custody with my kids? How do I make sure that this is done in a healthy way and that I'm not taken, for granted and taken advantage of by my ex? Or how do I make sure that I am not taking advantage of my ex and being unfair or mean to that person? And make sure I'm doing the best thing for my kids. Like there's a lot of questions that they have after the divorce that need to be answered. Nobody, who's answering that? Google, right?
Right.
So, and friends. So you can create a subscription product or an information product to go after they're done with you, where you're now continuing to serve them in another way. And guess what? If you stay in their lives, when they have their next thing, child support modification, something else comes up there, for me, my ex-wife became an alcoholic. I was back in court to get full custody of my kids. I didn't go back to the same law firm that I used for my divorce.
Yeah. I mean,
I
lawyers are
used a
terrible
different
at
lawyer,
nurturing for sure.
right?
Yep.
Had they kept me on the hook, had they guided me along the way, there's no question I would have continued to use them. So there's so many opportunities when you start to think outside the box, you start to think differently about the business and you start to think of it as a business person. Like what I have I have a potential client. What is the maximum number of widgets I can sell that client? What is the best way that I can, make money off that client? It costs so much money to bring that client in that really that's the key to success, is being able to unlock the most revenue per client, because the cost is so high to get them.
Right. Especially in legal. And lawyers never view it this way. So the two things you're talking about, like clients want cost certainty, they want guidance as to the legal process, and also things ancillary to the legal process, like you talked about. But lawyers are almost never selling them that. And then they're also never nurturing them. And that's a problem from like intake to close. You're absolutely right. Like lawyers are great at trying really hard to get clients in the door, have them sign an engagement agreement, and then it's crickets, right? Legal clients never feel cared for. That's why people don't like lawyers. But you can change the dynamic as an attorney. You just have to start thinking about things in a different way.
Yeah, I did an entire podcast episode because I hired a trademark attorney, and after I hired them, like a few days later, I got a package in the mail, and it was a very thought out gift package with cute little things in there that were relevant to the overall message of what they were trying to tell me.
Right.
But what they told me was, we care about you. We're happy that you're here, and we want to serve you. And that was a very different experience for me. And so much so that I went and I promoted them on the podcast and talked about it. And, and I'll talk about it to anybody that I see.
Yeah.
But that also opens my eyes as somebody who's guiding law firms on what they should do. It seems so simple, and it seems like something that, oh yeah, maybe somebody in this industry will do that. Why not you, right? Why not be the differentiator? Why not create that different experience? And I think that a lot of, sorry, go ahead.
No, and it's the thing that's funny is, like, as somebody who's a lawyer himself, like I haven't practiced law in a long time, but I'm still a lawyer. I hate to hire lawyers of all the professionals out there, because I know they're inefficient. I know they're going to overcharge me, and I know I'm not going to get things like that. Like you just talked about that experience you had with that one firm. That's so rare in the legal industry. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's so easy, we're in this gig economy, right? It's so easy to implement any of these things in your firm and not have to do it in-house. Like the first thing you think is like, I'm not going to have my staff putting packages together and putting weighing it and putting it in the mail. Great. There's companies that will do that for you.
Right. And yet those same law firms are selling out Christmas cards every year in mass quantities.
Right. And you know what? What's the value of those Christmas cards? Like, is that really helpful? Or is it more helpful to send out a card in June and say, hey, we're thinking of you. We just wanted to say hi.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally.
So you really need to think about that. I had Stacey Brown Randall here on the podcast, and she talks about how to get referrals without asking. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She wrote a book on that.
I believe I've seen her stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So her concept is to create this list of centers of influence. So basically people that would be referring business to you, and then create a system of touch points where you have a minimum of 8 touch points throughout the year. Some of them, you might do an in-person meeting, you might do a joint networking event where, hey, I'm going to this networking event, why don't you come with me? You might send them a card, send them a gift, different things like that, where you're doing these touch points throughout the year. And by doing that, you're going to stay top of mind. And, so why not implement something like that for your clients, where you can stay top of mind for your clients, and you create a process around it. So it's not like you have to be busy with it all the time, but that, okay, it's January. We're going to be sending out this planner for the year to all of our clients. Say, hey, we're thinking of you. We wanted to give you something that'll help you, keep your goals that you're are so front and center for you right now, and front and center for the rest of the year, or something like that. And things like that are just thoughtful. And let them know that you're thinking of them. And you never know when they're going to refer somebody, or they're going to come back for more work. But you've elevated the experience that they're having with you.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And, breaking that down to a process is important. Getting that onto the calendar is important. And you're right. Like, the Christmas cards have limited utility if every law firm in the world is sending out Christmas cards, right? I used to know an attorney who sent out cards on Flag Day, far more impactful, right? Who's sending
Yeah.
those out? And if you can do these little things over the course of time, over the course of a year, it's like anything else. Like I talk to lawyers a lot about content marketing, right? Same type of thing. You got to make sure you're consistent. You got to make sure you're in front of people. You got to make sure you're giving them value.
So let's switch gears. Let's talk about, you just brought up content marketing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the I'm sure the answer depends on where the firm is at and how in their journey.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the most impactful use of time and money when it comes to marketing for a law firm?
Well, I think it depends on like the stage, right? So if you're a startup firm or a growing firm, like I think what you want, like content marketing, I love is something for a small firm to do, just because it's sweat, right? It's not necessarily paying anything out, and if you can generate, like as I said before, clients want to know about the legal process. Lawyers don't do a good job of delivering that. So if you have little content pieces that come out all the time that express your expertise, that's great. That's a fantastic way to grow your network. And then also, if other people start noticing that, you get a bunch of backlinks, right? And then your content looks more relevant to Google search. Now, moving forward, I think if you lay that as the background for your firm or as the bedrock for what you're going to do in terms of marketing, then you start yoking some paid advertising campaigns on top of that. Maybe you throw some money at an SEO firm. Maybe you do some social media marketing, which I think is relatively inexpensive for the value you get out of it. That's the next step I would take if I was a law firm. So I tell lawyers all the time, like if you're building a business, start with content marketing and stuff that you can do for free before you get into the paid advertising, because the paid advertising is just going to be so much more effective. Everybody's always looking for like the short, quick answer and the immediate success, but you got to build that up just like you do in any other business. And if you're starting it up, like it really helps in terms of brand recognition and identifying what you do as well, which takes some time.
Yeah, and you know what, the key with content marketing is to be consistent with it, and therefore you
Yeah.
need to be realistic about what you can do, what your bandwidth is,
Right.
and what medium is comfortable for you. I have a podcast. I hate writing. I'm not writing blog
Right.
posts. I can
Yeah.
get behind a mic and talk for an hour, and it took zero preparation for me, and it's very comfortable for me like that. That's why I love podcasting, and I love consuming podcasts. Same thing. It's not that I don't like reading. I love reading books, but
Right.
I'm not going out and reading blog posts. So
Yep.
it doesn't make sense for me to write blog posts. Now there's plenty of people who consume blog posts. So one day I'm going to have somebody on my staff whose job is to write blog posts, but
Right.
it's still not going to be me, right? And
Yeah,
video
you got to
also
pick a
very,
path. Yep.
yeah, exactly. And I'm very comfortable on video, but
Mhm.
I don't do as much of it because um, I think that it requires consistency, and my life is so with little kids and big kids and a business, all the different things. I find it to be extremely difficult to pin down a time slot that I can be consistently showing up on a regular basis. So I don't do live video as a primary form of content, but video is definitely in the plans for me.
Mhm.
But I think that you're right. I think that I actually push people away from starting with content marketing because it takes so long to see results. And when you're starting out, you need results quickly. But I like the idea of starting with content marketing, knowing it's going to take a while for results, doing just the minimum that you know that you can do, and allowing that to just take its course at the same time that you're doing the first primary thing. And I think for somebody who's just starting out, the primary thing is referrals, right? Go
Right.
to family and friends. Go to
Yes.
other professionals that might be able to refer business your way, and just start to create those relationships, get the word out about what you're doing, and start to hopefully get some referral business brought in. Get involved in local networking groups, and just start to get people to know who you are and know what you have to offer at the same time that you're doing that content marketing. I think it's just, they're both sweat equity. They're both putting in the work, but it doesn't cost you anything. It might
Totally.
cost you a little
Yeah.
bit to be in a networking group, but it
Well,
doesn't
no.
cost you anything to show up.
And I talk to lawyers about the content marketing piece because I think most lawyers intuitively get that they got to get referrals, right? Like if you look at the vast majority of law firms, like they're built on personal referral networks. So lawyers largely know how to do that. The content marketing side of things, I think flummoxes a lot of lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah. And they think that they need to know more than they really need to know. Right.
Right.
I just did an interview with a gentleman who owns an SEO agency. And we had a whole conversation around SEO. And it's a great conversation. It's wonderful for people to focus on that. But the reality is that if you don't have the time to worry about SEO, then don't. Just create
Right.
content and put it out there. And
Right.
just let Google do its magic and figure
Yeah.
out whether it's worth showing to people.
It's SEO light.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, it's going to, you send it out as a newsletter to people who you have their email address. That grows over time. You get more and more emails. You're sending it to more people. People are naturally checking the thing you wrote out, especially if it intrigues them. And ultimately, Google will find you.
Right. Totally.
Or you can afford to bring in an SEO agency. So I don't think that you need to worry about, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do SEO, therefore I'm not going to write.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Like I tell people, dive into it, right? And as I said, if you pay people later on, it's so much more impactful if you have some presence online. Like starting from, I think the problem with like people who hire SEO firms is they're like, okay, I need results right away. And then they're nobody on the web, right? So be somebody on the web first, then hire somebody to help you out, and you're going to get much better results than you would otherwise. Like lawyers always want these things where they can buy in, get immediate results, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to lay some groundwork first, and it involves some effort, like you said.
Yeah, we had a guest on the show who did the episode was how to get how to get 1,000 5-star Google reviews by Sam Malai. And I had Sam on the show, and
I
he
know
basically
Sam.
talked about how he got 1,000 Google reviews. If you go look now, it's probably over 2,000. The last time I checked, it was 1,700. And it's simply a process that he created on the back end to follow up with clients and ping them until they did the review.
Right.
But it's my second to top most downloaded episode on the podcast. And the truth is that that's work that you need to do. You can't expect an agency to do that for you. But when you go to a marketing agency, if you already have those Google reviews, then they have something to work with. If the Google reviews are not there, they can get you to rank in, Google My Business or the Google Map Pack, but still people are not going to choose you because there's somebody else who's got more reviews than you.
Exactly.
All right, Jared, I want to be aware of your time. I know that you've got to feed your
I got kids to
today.
feed, man.
Yes. And I there's a lot that we did not unpack that I would have loved to unpack. We did not talk about technology. We did not talk about your chatbot software. I ended up taking your time talking about football. So I apologize for that.
No, the football conversation was important.
But what I would like to do is I would like to have you come back again and do another interview at some point where we can dive into tech, which I think is your strong point, and talk about the chatbot software. But I want to be mindful of both of our time and commitments. So can you tell me or tell my listeners how they can best follow up with you, check out what you're doing, and take the next step if they're really interested in seeing what is Jared up to?
Yeah. Go to my website, redcavelegal.com. And then I'm also fairly active on Twitter. I've got an account there just on my first and last name, Jared Correia. And I post most of the stuff I do on there as well. So yeah, thanks for having me. I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, I need to have a conversation with you about Twitter and what the value is there, because I'm on Twitter, but I'm not active on Twitter.
I wrote the ABA book on Twitter, man. We can talk.
Absolutely. And I am going to just quickly plug your chatbot software. So if you go to gideon.legal, www.gideon.legal, check out the chatbot software there. And if it's the right thing for your firm, give it a try. And yeah, this has been a great conversation.
Fun.
I appreciate it. Folks, there you have it. You know that we've got the summit coming up in February. I've talked about it a couple of times on the podcast. We're going to be opening up ticket sales very shortly. So stay tuned for information about that. But this is going to be an off the charts event. This is going to be like nothing you've experienced online. You've been through a lot of virtual conferences this year, and to call them a conference is a stretch. But this one's going to be different. And I assure you that this is going to be one that you want to mark your calendar for, and you want to be there in person, because it's going to be fun. My dream and my goal for this event is to have a band, have dancers, have a real stage, get the audience involved, have massive amounts of networking, connections, and really relevant topics like the one that we just had today on the podcast. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, we're here twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll see you again on Tuesday. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning into the Profit with Law podcast. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us, as well as helping us reach more people with this valuable content. Please leave us a rating and review in your favorite podcast directory. Join us again next time when we are back with even more strategies to profit with law.